MGM, everyone. Happy Monday. It's great to be here. I'm Titus. I run go-to-market for Civic. And I'm going to be talking about making decentralized identity click. It's a topic that we've been talking about on and off for the past few years. I think we're not quite there yet. I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to also share a few solutions on how we can make this move forward. As you know for sure, identity is a super important part of the process. I think being here at the beginning of the build cycle is super important because when you make a choice about your identity tool and your authentication tool, you want to be able to set it and forget it, make sure it works, and yeah, essentially make sure your users have a great user experience from the get-go. Well, a quick intro about myself. I run go-to-market for Civic, as I said. I've authored a decentralized identity paper at IIW a few years ago. I've also authored papers on AI and identity with World Economic Forum. Co-authored 2 AI books. So I've been in the crypto space since 2017. Super excited about where this is going and how we can make identity better. So about Civic, we're a multi-chain user management platform. We started off as an identity platform, and we quickly realized that to be able to deliver the user experience that we want and be able to help Web3 builders and Web2 builders to onboard users more seamlessly, we had to go above and beyond the identity piece and build the authentication element as well. We essentially enable people to verify whether a person is a bot or not, to verify a one-person, one-chain connection, and also to verify their identity for compliance purposes. So we've issued 1 million passes to date. We're working with 600 dApps and projects on 15 plus chains. We've been around for almost 11 years now, 10 years now. So 2015, we've been building for a while, and we're super excited where the space is going. So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about why is decentralized identity not clicking. We're talking about what are the biggest barriers for adoption, what needs to change for us to be able to go beyond those barriers, and then I'm going to offer a few solutions, and then talk about the path to mass adoption. And last but not least, I have a QR code where there are some tools that we want to offer out to everyone building today to make your user onboarding experience more seamless. So first of all, what's going on? Why is it identity that is not clicking? Like, we agree that users should be able to control their digital identity, but the adoption is not there because of the bad UX. And by bad UX, I mean this. We went from generating Bitcoin addresses by typing or moving the mouse for entropy, and these numbers and letters on the screen, to the seed phrases, which I think for most of us, like OGs in the space, they make sense, but for somebody on the street, it's like if you go out and stop them and say, hey, do you want to create a crypto account? Like, if you store the 16 or 12 seed phrases, like, is that something that you're comfortable with? I'm pretty sure they won't understand why and what to do with them. And they'll be super worried that they're going to lose them. So that's essentially, I think, the primary UX problem in the space right now. And that's why we're all talking about account abstraction and wallet abstraction in the space. So to dive into the big problems in the space, right? First and foremost, friction in onboarding. There are usually too many steps too soon for users to do to be able to onboard to Web3 apps. So let's say you want to play your Web3 game. You've never had an account with them. You don't have a wallet. You don't have anything. You go in, you sign up. You're prompted to create a wallet. You're prompted to create a seed phrase. You're being asked about what kind of currency you want to use. You're asked about gas price, about using gas, about using certain tokens. That results in like an 80+% drop off. If you compare this to a Web 2 experience, the friction is much less there. People usually sign in with one click. The second thing that we think is a problem in the space is the lack of familiarity of the tools that are being used. So you're used to signing in with an email address. You're used to signing in with your favorite email provider or your favorite social media provider. When it comes to the crypto space, you're often greeted with, hey, use a wallet, scan this QR code, or connect a wallet that's actually a Chrome extension or browser extension. So at that point, people are like, well, I don't know what this is, and I don't trust it, so I'm not going to use it. The third problem that we see is the ecosystem fragmentation. Almost everyone out there is using a different identity layer, so the credentials are not reusable. The tools themselves differ. The verifications need to be repeated. So users end up being confused like, hey, I did this before in a different app. Why do I have to get re-verified again? And then last but not least, I think the biggest one that I highlighted in the previous section is like the security and trust concerns that people have. Because ultimately, the downside in crypto, if you lose your seed phrase, if you lose your seed words, is that you lose access to your account, your identity, your history, like everything you've created around that particular game or that particular marketplace that you've accessed. Whereas in the Web 2 space, if you forget your password, then there's usually a reset mechanism. So what do we need to change to be able to create a better experience? I think first and foremost, the onboarding experience, thinking about like how can we minimize the number of clicks, how can we minimize the tools that people use, how can we create something that's familiar and soothing for the user when they come in. From an authentication tooling perspective, adding more secure sign-on options, adding more comfortable and familiar ways for people to sign in and create a wallet for them, that definitely will increase conversions. The approach to identity verification needs to change as well. Let's ask for what we need when we need it on demand. Not go on ahead and say like, hey, you need to do full KYC to play this kind of jumping chicken game. No, let's optimize to, hey, what is the attack that I'm trying to prevent? So if I'm trying to prevent a bot attack, let's just do a simple kind of liveness check. If I'm trying to prevent a Sybil attack, then let's try and do also biometrics uniqueness verification to ensure that only one user signs up per account. So simple things like that can significantly improve the experience. And then the fourth thing is credentials management, making sure we can reuse those credentials from one application to the other. And that means using standardized frameworks like the DIDs and essentially allowing people to carry their credentials from one application to the next. So how do we end up fixing this? Familiar logins and wallet abstraction is, I think, the lowest hanging fruit, and we've seen a lot of builders in the space go in that direction. Helping people sign in that way removes that friction that I was talking about. Passwordless authentication is another big one. There's been a lot of biometric tooling added. We can leverage the face auth on phones. We can leverage passkeys nowadays more and more. So using these methods to abstract that layer away from the user is helpful, and not having them remember a seed phrase. As I said, progressive identity verification, super important to ask for the right things at the right time, and then creating those interoperable credentials using decentralized networks is critical. So what does this look like in practice from a solution perspective? Now, we believe in an end-to-end user onboarding experience where people get those flexible sign-in options. There's a proof-of-person verification to empower like those trusted interactions in the ecosystem, and all that's bundled in for builders to be able to onboard users quicker and easier. So I'm going to go through both of these tools. The first one is called Civic Auth. This is where, as a builder, you can essentially choose which authentication methods you can bring on. It's super easy to use. It is generating an embedded wallet off the bat for users. And you can also onboard people with the kind of traditional wallets in the space. So you capture both the Web 2 novices coming into the space and then the Web 3 experts that are used to these interactions. And from a developer experience perspective, like we heard the stories in the auth space. Like it's difficult to integrate a lot of these tools. So with what we've built, if you just wrap your application around with the auth provider, provide a client ID, it works off the shelf, as opposed to having to like set up all these backend interactions and do all this backend work with that requirement for other tools. I'm going to go show a quick demo here. Hopefully it works. There's nothing better than to show and tell. So give me 1 second here. So essentially, this is the onboarding for Civic Auth. You go and to be able to create a developer account, you use our auth tool, obviously. It's a simple 1-2 step. Then you essentially grab the authentication widget. Very easily, kind of what you see is what you get. editor. Then you grab the code that I showed earlier as well, wrap your app around the code, and then boom, you have your authentication tool up and running right away. And then if you want to add other auth methods, it's as simple as like clicking around in a few boxes, saving it, and then if you go back to the app that you've built, now the login tool allows you to onboard people in all these like new ways that you've just selected. So it's as simple as that from an auth perspective. Now, what if you want to do some level of identity verification, right? I think this is where the Civic Pass comes in. We've been building this tool for many years now. This is the one with 1 million passes issued to date. It's a robust toolkit for developers to implement user verification, access control, using things like CAPTCHA verification, using things like biometrics, using things like government ID-based authentication. Also very simple to use, has both front-end, back-end, and on-chain components. I've given this example here of an on-chain gating, basically wrapping your function around a requirement to have a specific type of token, a Civic Pass token. So if the user doesn't have it, then you won't allow them to execute that particular function. And these are the things that come into play when, for example, you want to go above it, like a step beyond just the private signatures to be able to issue like a critical transaction, and you want to be able to verify, for example, is this the same person that initially signed up for the wallet and is in control of the treasury, or has this been compromised and being used by somebody else? So in the light of the recent hacks, I think this is something we want builders to think more and more about, like how can we add more privacy-preserving identity layers to these critical operations. So let me show you how this works. And mind you, this is going to be in the old paradigm, where we do ask people to connect their wallet. So essentially, you want to get a uniqueness pass in this case to be able to access a game, let's say. So you want to verify with the help of a biometrics check. This is, by the way, end-to-end encrypted. We ask for the signature to be able to encrypt the data. So once you enable the webcam verification, we go through, say hi to our colleague Mitch, and then once he's been verified, then the pass is going to be issued on chain. You can then use that in a smart contract context. By the way, the user can self-pay here. You can also pay on behalf of the user to abstract away the gas and the fees themselves. So now you see he has a uniqueness pass active, and he can now sign in or sign up to whatever app is being gated. So kind of rounding back to like the path to mass adoption, the path to mass adoption. I think like from a Web3 perspective, identity and authentication be as easy as Web 2. I think we need to start more with familiar logins, add those reusable credentials. Even if like we need to expire them after a period of time, I think it's important for people to be able to reuse them after, like let's say, one verification in the same month. We shouldn't ask them to verify again unless like we have a valid reason to do that. And then generally build that better UX that minimizes the number of clicks, minimizes the friction, the number of like other tools that people need to use to be able to onboard. So if they just like can one-click sign up with Google, sign up with Twitter or with GitHub, it's way easier for them than to create a wallet from scratch if they're not familiar with the Web3 space. And as they get more familiar, they can add those other methods to authenticate and then become more Web3 savvy in the process. So I want to leave you kind of with this thought around mass adoption. I think it won't happen because we tell people it's better. It'll happen when they don't even realize they're using it. Now, what I mean by this is, right now we use hundreds of apps every day, like dozens, hundreds of apps. For the most part, we don't care what infrastructure they're built on, if they run on AWS or Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure or a private cloud. We don't care whether they're a Canvas app or a native app on the phone. I think to be able to get to a place where crypto gets mass adoption and decentralized identity specifically gets mass adoption, we need to be able to abstract away as much as possible of the underlying infrastructure from the user so that they can have a seamless onboarding without having to have like a 2-day training on all of these tools that they need to use. So now with the practical part, we invite you to go build. Over here, there's a QR code that takes you to our docs. Get started with Civic Auth, get started with Civic Pass. Both of them are available for free right now. To try it out, please try and break them. Try and put them in your use cases. For Civic Pass, you can use them on testnet as you're building. You have super transparent and developer-friendly pricing for them. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what you guys can build with it. And yeah, let's make Web3 frictionless. I think that's the thing that I want to kind of leave you with. So that's it from my side. I know we have a few more minutes, so you have any questions for me, happy to kind of hang out and answer them. But yeah, and feel free to connect with us on X, on our website, Civic Key on Twitter, and then civic.com, the website.